In response to the many, many letters I have from the civilized world, including the Pacific Northwest, about why don't I ever say anything more in the area, at least touching upon thermodynamics, so, all right. Some things do lend themselves. First off, how about to get the intense, apparent, logical city stuff out of the way. Let me remind you, energy. Start off just from the city definitions will jump generally. In laws of physics about energy being the capacity to do work, and then specifically that for energy to be converted to work, there's got to be two unequal levels. Everybody remembers that, don't they? Well, I'll go into it more, but I wanted to state so that I can swim around and dart back and forth on it. And that furthermore, that the flow of energy is always going to be from a higher potential, a higher level, to a lower one. And also, I should get into, if we have enough time, another aspect of that, of the flow always going from a higher level. But although I am putting this as a corollary more of my own doing than they might in Science of the City, closely connected to that in ways that I am going to point to, you've got to keep in mind, and I want some verification of where I'm taking this perhaps, but that there is no full conversion ever of energy into work. That in other words, no conversion can ever break even,
much less win.
So, at least keep in mind what we're talking about. That for energy to turn in to work, for energy to do something, for it to be converted, there has got to be two levels. Now, some of the obvious aspects, don't anybody get scared yet, because I'm by no means going to give some sort of lecture on physics, even at the high school level. But certain areas, certain forms of energy, the obvious, they should be obvious to you. If you took good mechanical energy, you've got to have two levels. You're going to talk about energy turning into some kind of work, and we had a brick here, and I knock it off the podium. All right, there has got to be a difference in height. Talking about mechanical energy, we're talking about the very obviously physical, observable world. There would be no energy turning into work if I took the brick down here at the level of the floor and I just kicked the brick. You understand that? There has got to be two levels. The brick has got to fall. If we're talking about thermal energy, there's got to be a hot body next to or somewhere connected to. There's got to be at least two. There's got to be a binary situation. They've got to be unequal. You got to have one body, one pool of energy that's hotter, and you've got to have one that's colder. If we were talking about electrical energy, you have got to have, for instance, within electrodes, you've got to have the energy flow is going to be running from a cathode to a negative end to an anode to a positive end. There is no such thing as an energy flow. Nothing will be converted at an equal level. It is simply impossible according to the city physicists, and I'm not here to argue with them, especially since it's true. And I didn't study physics, but again, life has pushed things in such a way that everything that is true anywhere is true everywhere. Now consider beyond the world of science. Consider that there is no conversion of energy from a single level. And consider the three examples that I gave out of the areas of forms of energy of mechanical, thermal, and electrical. And of course there are examples that we could make in the other areas of nuclear and whatever else is left. But now what if we could talk about another situation that exists within man's intelligence, an area that is not considered to be a form of energy, that's certainly not ever considered to be or discussed up until today, that in any way that the human intellect is itself a form of energy, that is possible of it being converted into another form of energy. Conversely, if there's other forms of energy could pass through, could flow through human intelligence and not be interfering with the general laws of physics, or if you want to look at the second law of thermodynamics as being the general area, was my threatened joke in the preface of what I'm discussing now, that the area of the human intellect and what goes on in a way that has not ever been observed, not been noted, would not belie and not contradict the laws of physics, specifically the ones I mentioned of converting energy into work, converting one form of energy in fact to another. If we had a situation that there is not a conflict with the general laws of physics and specific laws of physics, then within man's intelligence you would have to have energy flowing from a higher, a hotter, a positive, since all three of those fits. If we were speaking of the mechanical level, mechanical aspect of energy, or the thermal, that was hotter to colder, the mechanical was higher to lower, and with the electrical it was from a positive, or from a negative to a positive. Could you see then in human intelligence, again, surprise, surprise, that even the words fit? Even the words, if I denied that they were metaphorical, then all of you have been around enough and read enough that immediately what should strike you as how serendipitous that you could look at. I can correctly point to a flow and energy in the human intellect, but it would have to be not only single, unified, on a single level basis. They have got to be an unequal situation. Whereas the energy has got to be flowing even within human intelligence. You describe it from a higher to a lower area. It's got to be going from a hotter to a colder area. Or it's got to be going from a negative to a positive area. It's the laws of physics, and if you think that your brain is exempt from that, don't tell me, because I don't like to be frightened at my age. Consider the implication. Consider all of this operating, of course, in a closed system, since I normally say that, and even physics on a good day must point this out, because all laws, thermodynamics, all laws have got to be couched within the framework that the human mind immediately adapts anyway, within a closed system. But now within the closed system, you are left with this. How does anybody ever learn anything? If intelligence is subject to the same laws, which it is, and that for energy to be converted, for energy to turn into work, for apparent knowledge to become of any value, for it to have an operating currency and value to it, it has got to flow in such a way that it comes from the higher to the lower, the hotter to the colder, the negative to the positive. does this not almost sound like involution? At least does it not sound like, if any of you followed this, I thought I was making it simple, that it's just simply irrational. If you don't know anything, then where's anything going to come from? If you start off and you're colder compared to something else, what is the something else? How is all of this possible within a closed system? Not an isolated phenomenon of me saying, well, here are two bodies within the closed system itself, and this body over here is at 500 degrees, and this other body is at 250 degrees. Put them next to each other, and they're going to reach an intermediate level. That the energy, the heat in this case, is going to flow from the hot body to the cold body. Then the question is, I was hoping you'd see the question is, then where is your heat going to come from? Where is additional intelligence going to come from in a closed system? Uh-oh. You want to go back to the head? And I did so have some hope for this tonight. I don't know, didn't check the stock market, but I guess I can just ascertain on my own already what the current value of hope is now. Must have been a bad day in the hope market. Well, let's see if I can sneak around somewhere. Let's play like I'm going to talk about something else. How about this? Since I mentioned it, this is not really that technical, so let's get on to something more interesting. I don't even find that interesting. So let's try this. Let's try this. The fact that there is no such thing as full conversion. And I won't upset anybody anymore. Some of you may remember whatever was called the Carnot principle, that back in physics, I'm not going to stay there, but back in physics, there is even an equation wherein you can easily ascertain and prove, of course, if you accept the equation as being an absolute operating principle, such as in thermal conversion, that no matter what you had, let's say in thermal conversion, no matter what the difference is, no matter how great the difference between the hot body and the cold body or how close it is, all of the energy, in this case all of the heat, will not pass from one to the other. Now, I guess laymen normally want to say, well, it gets wasted. Which you people shouldn't be laymen, not in science, but you shouldn't be intellectual laymen. If it's wasted, that means it got out of the room. And it didn't get out of the room. It apparently gets unused in that particular conversion. And so thus it comes out at the ordinary level of consciousness to be the same thing. That you cannot get a full conversion. Now, another way of looking at this, instead of conversion, is a machine, which is doing the same thing. That no machine converts all the energy, whatever it's doing. If it's converting mechanical to thermal, it cannot apparently convert all of it. No way. It's not true mathematically, and it's not true materially. Now, does that create any interest in your brain? Not in what I'm talking about, but any interest in your brain regarding your brain. That there is no full conversion. All right, it was a trick, of course, because I'm still talking about the same stuff. So, the stuff I told you I wasn't talking about, here we go. Back to intelligence. Do you understand that taking the Carnot principle, at least in one area, that if there is something to be learned, and there it is, you can't ever learn all of it. It's not possible. The temperature, it's the T2 being the hot. You take the hot. How about the dumb? Listen. The hot minus the cold over the hot will give you the ratio. And science is satisfied, and of course if they're satisfied, hell, I'm satisfied, that they have proven this time and time again, from electrical to thermal, that you can take it, and it's just easily proven. It always comes out that the equation, the principle, is in fine working order. It never, if you can see it, it can never come out to 100%. The equation cannot. And it's not theoretical. The equation, I shouldn't call it that, I guess it's a principle. It's a law or a principle. Because they have now, through enough experience, that no matter what the figures, no matter what you plug in, if you're talking about thermal, and you start out, and the hot one was 500 degrees, and the body next to it was 250 degrees, you're going to end up in that case with 50%. And it's not just, as I said, an equation. They're satisfied that they've proven it time and time again in all areas of energy that 50%, but everybody, can you see that or not? That if one body was 500 degrees, the hot body, and the cold body is 250 degrees, what you're going to come up with, if you do that, 250 from 500, and then 500 into 250, you come out with 50%. That is the percentage of energy that is not converted. Now don't be dumb now and just say, well, it goes away or it got lost. It didn't get lost. It did not get used. And it's possible to have zero if you start trying to push the inequality closer. That you do not just deal with, in this case thermally speaking, 500 as opposed to a 250 degree. You get them both 500, 500 minus 500 over 500, then, and don't say, well, that's obvious, but then you've got this. But in effect, you have got the attempt that somebody can believe, because with inside any structure, you know that there are molecules within a 500 degree object, body, pool of energy, that there are molecules in there that could be less, be more. But there is going to be no flow of energy. Now, how about internally? What if people are what they thought they should be? Okay. That is, that I am picture perfect. I got no complaints of myself. Now, I've described this in several ways before. What you would be, pardon the oxymoron, you would be a living, splendid example of viable entropy. If you indeed were well balanced by city definitions, if you were indeed pleased, if you were indeed not suffering from any inner conflicts, guilts, anything, plug in any word you want, it doesn't matter. If internally you were that kind of landscape, so that no brick could fall off of a high place and transfer from mechanical or transfer energy through the falling. If you were not in some place hot and in some place colder, to where there'd be a thermal transfer, or where there was one spot that apparently, using a metaphor, I'm sorry, of electrical energy, wherein energy would be flowing from a negative area in you, a cathode, into a positive area, an anode. If that were not possible, if you were level inside. Now think about it. That is everyone's dream. Life has everyone dreaming that. If you were actually a good Christian, to fall back on religion, to try and just give some readily available external apparent paradigm that life has provided, if you were indeed a good Jew, a real Christian, a true Muslim, the dream is that you'd be on that level. You'd be dependable. You would never do anything un-Muslim-like. You would never act in a non-Jewish way. You would never be non-Christian in your behavior, your thoughts, your feelings. You would be zzz. Of course, there's this machine that they hook up to people, that when it does that on that machine, I just thought about it, normally, I think they, in TV movies and stuff, they say, this man is brain dead. That just came to mind, I don't know why. It's got nothing to do with being a good religious person, obviously. In life, speaking now intellectual. Let's consider just for a second, humor me, that let's throw in intellectual into the hopper of energies, the thermal and nuclear and mechanical and so on. That if the human intellect was a form of energy. Now externally you can see this. I even had Kyrut, I allowed Kyrut, several weeks back if you notice, no more than 2 weeks ago. One of his, I don't have a quote, but it was something like, don't ever try to learn anything from anybody dumber than you are. And if I recall, it didn't get a lot of laughs, which is not necessarily any proof of anything, but then again, it is not necessarily not any proof. Why would anyone try to learn anything from anybody dumber than they were? Why would anyone expect to go out and to stand around the bottom of a mountain and wait for boulders to leap up to the top? Which I assume just from your physical experience in life through your senses you believe that, well, that's ridiculous. Whether you'd ever believe that a colder body put closer to a hotter body will do anything other than what it will do. So nobody would go, if they were just reasonably sane in the city sense, no one would go and try to receive instruction from someone dumber than they are. You are drawn if you are operationally sane in the city sense. If life is using you as some form of energy, that is, you do some sort of work, then you'd be drawn to somebody in any kind of field of instruction, whatever it was, to somebody hotter than you are, higher than you are, to use the mechanical energy metonymy, more positive than you are negative, to use the electrical metaphor. It just seems reasonable, right? To say the very least. You would not go to somebody who knew less than you. You would not go to somebody to try to learn something who was less passionate. That is, who was less hot. You would go to somebody who was fervid in what they were doing. Now all that seems obvious enough, doesn't it? Tell me it does. Like it does. All right. Now, to that other binary aspect of life as it appears. Same thing, same song, different key. Instead of us talking about out there, is now internally. As people believe, you people still believe. I get letters, notes from you people out of town, that you still speak about this inward journey and how much I've helped or whatever, but you still talk about how this means more and more, or how my words mean more and more, the more you pursue this inner journey to yourself. In words to that effect. Think about that a second. Journey to where? Do you believe that you're now bolder and that there is this great, I guess, cosmic accident wherein molecular structures within a larger system, that is, that within an ice cube could be some molecules that were hotter in that ice cube than the molecules, one or two of them, in a fire. But now you've got to have faith in that. It's never happened. That is, that under ordinary closed conditions that the freezing point of something is higher than its melting point or vice versa. To believe that, then you've got to believe that somewhere internally in this so-called inner journey of you kind of being your own authority, your own teacher, sort of going along and checking along on me, whether you still agree with what I say, you are now decided that you are a boulder, and all you got to do is stand here next to the mountain, and suddenly you're going to go and fly right up to the top. Not just you, anybody. You seek instruction. You seek heat from a colder body, that is, yourself. You seek positive flow of energy from an area that is negative. If it's not negative, if you aren't lacking, what are you doing involved with this? What are you doing involved with anything? And if it is not from, you assume what you're seeking is some higher source. Is that you? From some higher level, higher potential. You don't just have to say level. We can go back to the wonderful world of physics and refer to it as a potential. The flow of energy, you can use it synonymously. It's not just a level, but there has to be the potential that one of the bodies, thermally speaking, has to be potentially hotter. One of the bodies has to be potentially higher. To use one description of a transformation involving mechanical energy, that the brick, the boulder, has to be higher up to produce, to convert energy. But no matter what you do back in the world of the city, no matter what apparently takes place out here, there is no full, no complete conversion possible. It's not that some of it disappears. Forget that. Surely all you just accept even the first law of thermodynamics, that energy is not created or destroyed. Even you mouthed that somewhere back in high school to get through high school physics. And assume that that's still true, that they hadn't changed the law. But then tie it into the fact that you cannot get a full conversion, a complete conversion of energy. The rest of it does not get destroyed. It does not go away. Now, does anybody see any possible pertinence internally to the fact that you cannot completely learn something? That if somebody says, did you ask somebody a question? Somebody apparently instructing you in some area. Whatever it is, if it could be measured, that is, that you could observe it, that the person says, all right, I'll answer the question, I'm going to tell you everything I know. That is, I'm going to convert my energy. In this case, if they're going to speak to you, I'm going to convert it into sound, into a kind of mechanical energy, and that is, I am going to transfer the energy, what I know, to you. And I'm glad you asked the question because I know the answer, and the person says, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And you might even say, all right, would you repeat that? Da-da-da-da-da-da. You might convert it to another form of energy. You're trying to convert it right then to electrical energy. Your brain, that is, you're going to remember it, but then you may try to convert that back to another form, mechanical energy. Let me write it down, but then you repeat it also. And you say, all right, I've got it. But you don't got it. We're not measuring now, in some way, the quality of the so-called instruction the person's passing. That's not even in question. I just involuntarily leaped from my larynx. It's not a question of the quality, the correctness, the truthfulness. I'm simply telling you that what the intellect of one person attempts under the best of conditions, the best, absolute best, optimum, the energy cannot be converted totally. Never. Even if you and the person agree. If the person says, all right, now you understood what I said. Repeat it back to me, and you repeat it back. And you say, you understand the implications, what the words mean. You go, yeah. The person says, all right, now you know as much as I do about that. I have now conveyed to you my full knowledge of it, and it is not true. It is impossible. No matter the conditions. It has nothing to do with psychology. It has nothing to do with the humidity. It has nothing to do with your education or his education. It is as impossible as it is on a strictly mechanical level that one machine or a machine can totally convert energy from one form to another. It is literally impossible in this 3D closed system, and it is equally as impossible and never noted that intellectually information cannot be converted fully. It will not flow fully. It is impossible physically. Would anyone now like to take a short second here, a few seconds, a break, and ponder the so-called areas, the so-called sometimes questions and problems regarding education, regarding intelligence in general? And some of the little side areas of people saying, well, the problem with life is people are not rational enough. Those that try to convey information, they don't speak up. They should take elocution. They should take lessons in logic. It's a matter of communications. That's it. It's a matter of communications. It's a breakdown. It's a failure. All communications is a partial breakdown. The same way that all conversions of energies of all kinds are partial failures. They will be by, what's his name? Carroll's principle. They will always be a partial breakdown, if that's what you want to call it. That all of the energy cannot be converted. Never. It never has been, never will be. Now, back again to the other wonderful world of Disney, of sports, of life. You, the internal world. I was dragging up stuff about Carrot's principle, and I was doing the one about thermal transfer. I can't resist doing this. What if we had, I think this used to be the old classic verbal description of it, you've got two containers here, the hotter and the colder, as an example of the principle and the fact that there has to be unequal distributions for any energy conversion to take place. How about right in there? Could anybody see that as being like the limits of the difference between the apparent in here of you and the apparent out there of life? Or vice versa, it doesn't have to be the hot or the cold. But that there is continually, if there is an inequality, that the energy is forever flowing one from the other. What's the difference? Let's say that they're both water, but this one over here is at 500 degrees and this one is some other degree. Do you see it's the same thing? And the energy that people believe, well, I'm observing something, or I'm learning something, I'm taking instruction, but now wait a minute, I'll think about that. That is, I'll take the energy in here into the other container, and that's a different matter. It is. It's in a colder area. It's in a lower area to jump into mechanical. It is in a negative area to go into the electrical form. But it's the same thing. I was going to turn your attention again back internally, apparently. Do you see that when you have apparently, under all ordinary conditions, told yourself something, which I won't go through again tonight gagging and laughing, but I thought I gave enough hints tonight I did that you told yourself something, that you talked to yourself. Look at all the times I referred to it in the partnership and Smith and Jones and all that. And then that night, and I didn't say anything, I just began to laugh and pull that little act about talking to yourself. Nobody enjoyed that? Talking to yourself. You talking to yourself? I think he's asleep. When you talk to yourself, what kind of energy flow has there been? What kind of work, which there's got to be an energy flow, remember, that's what energy is the capacity to work, and for work to actually take place, energy has got to be dynamic. It's got to move. It's got to flow from one form to another. It's got to flow from one area, one object to another. That's the only way that is work. You don't have to go back to high school and study physics. That is what they mean by work. Something happens. What has happened internally under all ordinary conditions when a person apparently has talked to themselves? And I don't mean in just some area wherein you think, well, I suddenly have some great insight. I've decided that God is banana peels. It doesn't have to be that. I don't mean something that apparently has some great significance in a metaphysical or a philosophical manner, but every time you tell yourself something, every time you listen to that noise that seems to be you telling yourself something. How about this for non-metaphysical and philosophical, when somebody says, boy, don't you just hate such and such kind of people? And you go, yeah. Brilliance. Brilliance. I don't mean that, yeah, is good or bad, but you're talking about an incomplete, you're talking about a flawed flow of energy. You're talking about a flow that can be so flawed that it can be zero. And apparently not be. That is, apparently something is happening. But it is never complete. It is never total. That is, apparently what flows, most of you nodded, I'm sure that you thought that you followed when I said you can see, that an instructor, another person, another human, you should be able to see the possibility at least. That what one person says they are attempting to convey, and you say, yeah, I got it. And I was trying to point out to you that not just metaphorically, but is subject to the same kind of laws as that of the flow, to use that example, of thermal energy, is none of it, in no case does all of it get converted. In no case does all of what seems to be intellectual energy, information, get converted, transformed, transferred from one person to another. Now, if you can see that externally, why can't you conceive of some possible, might I add, startling, if not stirring, implications of that internally, vis-a-vis every time you go, yeah, or no, even I don't know. What is it? But to begin with, it is, without any doubt, it is less than complete conversion. Whatever it is you're saying, even you do not completely hear. Whatever it is you're saying, wherever you apparently got it, you didn't completely get it. Even if it came from some source that we could identify that one time, that one source was absolutely correct. Not just true, it was correct when you got that, when you heard it, when you read it, but you didn't get it all. You might have got none of it. You might have got 1%. But you definitely did not get it all, or else the laws that govern the 3D world are gone. So you didn't get it all. And now you're instructing yourself on the basis of flawed information. And yet everybody at the ordinary level takes themselves as being the final arbitrator of what's true, what's correct. To wit, a great example is people worrying about whether I'm a fraud, worrying about whether I finally got off in some area that I don't understand. And many people at least believing for a long time. Some of you still, it's hard to shake yourself because you don't perceive it in this way. But that, well, one way to be sure that you're not getting lost in some metaphysical jungle or being taken in by some sweet-talking con man is my own internal compass of truth. Did you hear that? I still like that. At least you have your own sense. Just never let you down. That there's always something in you that you can gauge whether you're actually fooling around with some kind of fanatic or a maniac. You know, some of what you say I can take, you know, some of it I have to think about. Some of it they have to think about. Everyone, for some length of time, should remember Carnot's principle, because it applies just quite handily. And there's not much math involved with that. Just remember the formula, the T2, take about it. Intelligence minus dumbness over the original, whatever apparently you could judge to be some quantity of intelligence. It seemed to me the reason I use the example that the easiest to think about to start with is look at the T2 and the T1, etc. as temperature, that is thermally, that is the kind of transfer that give you a percentage. You don't have to, of course, think about some percentage, but the principle, the equation involved itself, that no matter when one thing is converted to something else, that one thing is passed to something else, all of the MF doesn't get passed. It cannot. All of the heat doesn't get transferred. All of the electrons do not pass from the negative to the positive end. All of the energy of a brick falling, of a boulder falling, of 20 boulders falling together, the conversion of energy is never full. Never. Got to turn the tape over. Let me verbally go back and take another swipe regarding sort of an offshoot of what's-his-face's principle. Carnot no conversion can break even, and as the kid pointed out, much less win. That should be the full sentence. No conversion. No machine, if you want it that way. No machine, no matter how large a machine, no matter how small a machine, no matter where it was built by a bunch of drunken bricklayers from New Hope, Alabama, or whether it was built by people in Argyle socks at MIT. Whatever the machine, no matter how big, no matter the material it's made of, the machine will never break even. Now, if that helps to start with. Now, let me use what we should be able to discuss, or the term I should throw in, should be able to plug in. No conversion. It's the same thing. It just sounds a little less physical to some of you physical-minded brain thinkers. No conversion can ever break even, much less win. It's a fact. Now, what does all of human common sense, all the way from religious teachings to the desire that, well, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to quit this. I'm going to start doing that. I am simply going to change. I am going to do better. That is a declaration that you believe that a conversion can not only break even, but can win. Once you realize that, you realize why, up until now, you have never actually ever lost weight. You might have lost some weight, but what happened? Well, I found it again. Yeah, but one time I quit smoking. How long ago has that been? Been 4 years, 11 months, 37 days. And of course, those examples are not the proof. But what appears to be shifts, what appears to be changes, conversions of all sorts in life, do not break even. And yet apparently, life has arranged things in man's intellect that his conception is you can win. Not in some theoretical, not in some flimsy, vague way, but that is you can totally convert one thing to another. You can totally convert smoking, well, let me leave that. You can totally convert being a person with a bad temper to being a person with a not bad temper. It's impossible. If you were wired up and life made you 500 degrees, and through some necessity, you might think about it after the fact and try to explain it that was based upon your own volition and your own execution of will, that you lost 250 degrees. Life is wired up through man that you believe. You'll proclaim that you lost 500 degrees. And you didn't. It's not possible. There is no full conversion. Now, if you need... Well, I love these deathly silences. In fact, deathly is not even an adjective, is it? If indeed there was a full conversion of a person being able to convert one thing in them totally into something else, if that were possible, if you need this further proof, since you like, most of you seem to like apparent human examples better than you do scientific ones, how about this? If true conversion, full conversion of one form of energy, one thing in you would go to another fully, if that were true, then there would be no whats in the world. Excuses! You know what excuses are? Excuses are the part left over. Excuses are what amounts to the quotient, I guess, or the outcome of the principle that will show you, based on that equation, the percentage of energy that's gone apparently into entropy. It was not converted. Did everybody follow this? Can you even see it? That if it was 500 degrees... Does this show up?
Yes.
All right. If it was 500 degrees here and 250 degrees, then it would end up 250 from 500 to 250, then divide by 500 again, and you end up with 50%. Just for that one example. So 50% of the difference between the heat, using the thermal example, between the colder and the hotter, 50%, it didn't go away. It's still around, trust me. It's still around. But another way to look at this, to jump from figures, mathematics, and science, is then the missing 50% is what? It's every form of excuse. It is every form of explanation. It is almost, if you get real quick, it comes close to being almost every... All right. It comes close to... It is a big percentage of human conversation. It is talking after the fact. I remind you, people riding by on horseback for the first time, when I say excuses, I'm not using some psychological description that everybody tries to justify and rationalize. They do, but that's not what we're talking about. It's not some infantile attempt to squirm out of something. It is a part of being alive. It is a part of the conversion of energy in life for people to always have a comment. If they don't offer the comment, all you've got to do is solicit one. All you've got to do is look at somebody when they say, yes, I used to be so-and-so. That is, I used to be 500 degrees, but now I have lost all 500 degrees. I used to be this, and now I'm not this. And all you got to do, well, in most cases, not even verbally, is go. And the person will do what? All right, I saw that look. Now, wait a minute. I know what you're thinking. There. We have accounted for the missing, the unconverted energy that is always there within Carnot's principle. Does anybody find that interesting? Does anybody find it interesting how I have taken approaches years and years ago, or months ago, and encouraged you, tried to laugh at you, tried to trick you about not talking so much? Well, of course, a lot of times I've just had Kairos, somebody say, hey, you talk too much. Do you understand by not talking? I hate to... Does anybody get enough to where I can not even put words on it? What if not talking, and you had some idea what you were doing, that you begin to use energy that is not normally converted? Of course, I will admit, I'll point out one more time, this is almost antipodal to city reasoning. Current wisdom, for instance, as all you know, in the city it's normally referred to or considered now, always has been, but now it's couched in psychological terms, that you should talk. If you have any desire to talk, to explain yourself, to say you feel bad, it's to let it out because it can create high blood pressure, ulcers, and general psychological upheaval and discomfort internally. And so I apparently am saying almost the opposite. But it would seem as though, all right, if you do talk about it and there is unused energy that didn't get converted, then talking about it would kind of use it, right? Boy, that sounds right, doesn't it? Doesn't it? But I've warned you about that, or Kairos has. If it sounds right, if it makes sense in the city, forget it. Because if it makes sense in the city, you're talking about, at least in one area, within some little closed area where this is a piece of wisdom, that this is accepted and true in the city, then you're using one example of a fait accompli, a deed done of some conversion of energy. And the conversion was never complete. And so you're dealing with flawed information. You're dealing with lacking data, always. You're right up against the intellectual equivalent of Caro's principle. I think I just heard the kid say, was asking me, well, in that case, what might be? Could it even be talked about? What might be a full conversion of energy? Well, he said a fuller. Could it approach, what, 99%? Something like that? Yeah, all right. I was going to say that, and he just beat me to it. You can't hear that, Mike. Well, anyway, I was going to say that anyway. Is that possible? Is it possible to increase the percentage left over? The way in which to measure, that's one way, I guess, of measuring entropy, is energy that is right, at least in this case, is no longer available for conversion or for use. That something didn't get used. Some energy that we started with just in this closed binary system here, we're talking about 2 containers of liquid at different temperatures, thermally. So, as the kid was asking, is it possible to decrease the amount of unused energy? That is, to increase the efficiency intellectually of a person? Boy, I'm glad you asked that. I am. Usually, I have to leave him home, but I'm glad he asked. Aren't you? Okay, well, let's talk about... There's a couple more things I wanted to mention. Since I'm sure that most people now have had your appetite for physics, if not specifically thermodynamics, sated, let's go into the second most popular, well, the third most after animal husbandry, of politics. an update, a variation, a change in the way in which I was going to describe something in light of the principle. To either have more or less apparent verbal and intellectual energy either used or not used from something I've said before. I knew that would be an attention-getting preface to this paragraph. So here it is. There is a specific way. Apparently we'll start out talking about the container over here, that is apparently out there, the great institution of politics back at the city level. That there is a way in which you can, or I could say this, that the best understood, in fact, use that synonymously with the easiest perceived, use that synonymously with the most efficient. But the best understood form of government, as far as the people concerned, is a monarchy. Always has been, even is today. Now, even if we are apparently, or I'm apparently still, skating around the edges of a intellectual metaphor, that there is a kind of uncertainty, if you want to listen real fast since I took a side step here. We're not talking about politics, folks, but just notice how it seems to be true, and then take a step back on the path where I was trying to lead you. But even in areas such as where we live, that is the cutting edge, is the highest activation of life's intellectual nervous system through man, in the areas I have correctly pointed out from one level, from one view, the areas that produce the greatest technological progress, artistic apparent progress, if that could be judged, but it's accepted in life, has the healthiest people, the best athletes and all that. You're generally looking at areas that there's apparently individual freedom to transfer, or let's leave it at freedom for a second, before I trick you and make you see that politics is connected to the laws of thermodynamics. No, it's not. Don't worry. It's not. But regardless, that it seems to be, from most any view, that the best place to be would be where there seems to be a form of government that is not a monarchy. The one in which we live, and the rest of the parts of life's body, insofar as represented by human life on this planet, Western Europe, some parts of the Western Hemisphere, that seem to be some form of democracy. That is, the people, at least indirectly, run things. That they vote people in, they vote people out. But the best understood form of any government of control is a monarchy. Even the people not born into one. Even people that apparently have no great interest in politics. Good red circuit-based people, normally referred to in our part of the world as very conservative, right-wing, that would say, you know, I'll die for the American flag and for the VFW, or the AMVETS at least. Those very people are the ones, this is really a sidestep, but they're the very ones that continually at the supermarket pick up those nice publications that run stories about the British monarchy and all the little monarchies. They're the ones that buy that. That there is. It's not psychological, I'm telling you. Molecular, thermodynamic. Oh, no, it's not. That even people that grew up away from forms of government that are monarchies are attracted to it because it is the best understood to have a recognized, stable, known, undisputed, dominant force, this figurehead. That could be, as was the case throughout history, as you know, many times after the fact it seemed to be proven that the monarchy was simply a facade. That there was a group of people, a power behind the throne. But as far as the people is concerned, there was this dominant figure, known, undisputed, even if there were people in the throne, behind the throne, running it. Nobody. They didn't come out and say, hey, you people, forget George II. The man's an idiot. We're the ones been running things. Life is arranged in such a way that they knew not to do that. Even if they knew we're the ones running it, they know that in fact 3 or 4 of them, or a dozen of them. That they tell him what to do. They got their hand up the back of his dress and he goes, yeah, yeah, and he does what they say. as far as the people is concerned, that is still, or he is still, the dominant, recognized, undisputed figure. Now, comma. If this hadn't been such a good night, see, I would just put a period there, or at least a colon, and then I'd have gone on with this for 2 or 3 hours or days. But since you people have acted the way in which you have regarding the wonderful world of thermodynamics, I'm going to put a comma there, and we're going on. And here it is. Although what I just said is true, that the best understood, most efficient, but the best understood form of government is a monarchy, now let me point out that a real leader, really, a real leader would be one whom the people could not understand how he operated, or / how he thought. Now put that together with the first part of the sentence, if you can. That would be a real leader. That would be getting close. Even in the city, that's a real leader. If I wanted to take more time, I could draw out some historical examples or else make them up where this was true. But what I am pushing, the comma there in the middle of the sentence, is this latter part when I said really a leader is getting close to that kind of revolutionary aspect. I could say a revolutionary leader, and of course then take it internally to you. But the best understood form of government, now let's go from the apparent container of water out there to the one in here, through that great non-ending connection. People, ordinary people in the city, are seeking to some degree. They will accept the fact, even though they don't use these terms, that what they would prefer to have internally is a monarchy. People that would never believe that they had any political sentiments at all, but people attempting to be a good religious person. People who say, my only desire in life is to be a good Buddhist or Christian. What they're saying is, God, figure of speech, I wish, Jesus, Larry, I wish I had a monarchy. And the closer, of course they can't reach there, remember, because of certain laws. But the closer a person is to being a good whatever, a good Christian, let's say, then their feeling is, if they were describing it, no reason to doubt them, because remember, people in the city, one of the differences between them lying and somebody knows what they're doing is people in the city got to believe that's not a lie. Now you heard that just an hour and a half ago. Kyrie pointed that out and you've forgotten already, but that is a difference in what you people normally call lying. It's people in the city, you at the city level. The difference is you got to believe there's not a lie. So, once you understand that, there's no reason to ever question anybody what they say. If somebody says, yes, I'm a Christian, you're an idiot to question it. If they say that, they are. Not completely, of course. But as close as they believe they are, then what they are recognizing is the propriety, the correctness of a monarchy. But they attribute it to something else. They attribute it to the spirit of the gods in me, for my faith in the church, for whatever. But what they are responding to, molecularly, is a feeling of I am closer to a government, to a control that is a monarch, a single figure. There is a like flow of energy in what seems to be the attempt for one to psychologically help themselves, work on themselves, to stabilize their personality. All forms of so-called mystical activity throughout the ages that might attempt to even divorce itself from any recognized religion, it is still this belief, it is still this need that I'm going to flow from a lesser position of being a whole bunch of little bad people, a whole bunch of little bad attitudes, a whole bunch of little piecemeal education, and I am in some way thermodynamically. No, they wouldn't think that. I'm going to flow into a monarchy. I'm going to go from being these splintered little amounts of cocoons into a monarch butterfly. I couldn't resist it. Into a monarch. Although that be true, and although I've given enough examples, though you really following this, to see that that is a prevailing, once I describe it that way, that is a prevailing, that is a common genetic flow within man that comes out in the intellect, that he thinks this, he says it, and he just never used those kind of terms. But although that be true, that is the nature of city life, that is the nature of city wiring, a real leader, to go beyond that level, to go beyond being, if you can get a feel for it, if you can recognize it, that is what your system wants, is a monarch. That's understood. If there was a dominant force, whether you thought it was going to be you or a sense of God, a sense of cosmic forces, or whether you thought it was Yogi so-and-so, some mystical teacher, that now everything is focused, that now the energy has been converted from all these splintered pieces of ignorance and half-knowledge and half-truth into one dominant, undisputed force, whether it seems to be you, which is almost impossible for ordinary people because of that great factor that even Carnot didn't put in. It's known as the humility factor. Life has thrown that in. I can do it mathematically, but we're running out of tape. So people can't really believe. You're not going to find people in the city. You know that. Well, look at you. Look around you. You're not going to find people that believe, all right, what I'm working for is for me to become goddamn king. Now, people almost feel like that if they even said that, you know, something would happen. Which is one reason you enjoy me apparently saying things like that. Because I don't say them, I am it. It's just a joke. Don't let it frighten your horses as you're riding by. But beyond that level, it's true there. But now I'm trying to turn a corner. I'm taking you into a world that there is no known, there is no easily or even verifiably describable way to put this, but I'm telling you it as an extension of all of this, and it turns the corner into another law of physics, one of my kind, that although that's true, that the best understood, the most efficient, the desired for people form of government is a monarchy, then if you can get around the corner, you can just glimpse around the corner. Another level of this, an extension of it, is a real leader, not just a monarch, not just an undisputed, recognized, dominant figure, maybe even intelligent at that level. That's one thing, but right around the corner, the part missing, the energy not getting converted fully, that is going into another dimension, the part that's connected to all this, over there a real leader would be such that the people, don't worry about just out there now, you, that the people cannot understand how he's working. Or you can take your choice of this, give you some room, they're the same thing. The people cannot understand how he thinks. Now notice I did not go back and undo or negate the aspects of the monarch back at the city level, because at this level he would still be intelligent. I'm saying it would not be counter to my descriptions, my attributes of the monarch of the city. It does not mean that he would not be undisputed. It does not mean that he would not be the dominant figure. I didn't take time tonight, but throughout all this you understand that all the flows that there is a dominant figure. We're still talking about a dance of a boulder falling from the top of a mountain. You're talking about a dominant force all the time that energy is being converted. Anybody swat that along the way? So the kind of government, the kind of ruler that I'm trying to put a rough verbal sketch on around the corner would still be dominant, always dominant. He'd be undisputed. He'd be intelligent, but it'd be a different kind of intelligence now. It'd be the intelligence that I gave you a second week of October 88's definition not before last, he'd be intelligent, he would be dominant, he would be strong, but in an unexpected, surprising, and normally unseen way, he would be what? Flexible. Whereas normally at the city level, a monarch is not flexible. That is part of, back at the city level now, remember I'm jumping back now to the 3D, the observable world, part of a monarch, for him to stay in control, and the people's got to agree, surely all of you know by now, even apparently out there, tyrants do not stay in power, simply because they're overwhelming everybody else. The people are dancing. They dance with a Stalin, with a Hitler, with an Attila. Tyrants stay in power because of the people. Monarchs. So what I wanted you to see was that the monarch, no matter how he seems to operate, has got the support of the people, but to keep the support, even if he apparently was a madman after the fact, or the Russians now or other parts of the world judging Stalin to be a madman. And something should have been done. They say that now 40 years later. Boy, something should have been done. Nobody did anything then. And don't simply say, if you're an ordinary person, don't simply say, well, he had too much power. Tell me something new. What I wanted you to see was that such figures, whether they apparently, from your little pissant view, that's another technical term that I don't have time to get into, from your little view, the monarch, the tyrant, this one dominant figure in some epoch of history could apparently be either good or bad, which is just irrelevant. You just think it is. But he had to be one thing to even be dominant, and that's what? Predictable, consistent. That Stalin was just consistently an ass. It doesn't matter. There has to be the appearance of a predictable energy conversion between the people and the guy. That the dance, even if apparently the dominant figure, the monarch, is stepping all over the people's toes, at least the people know it. Or they know he steps on your toe about every third step you take. Or he'll step on about 2 of your toes every step, and then maybe 2 other toes. But around the corner, what I'm hinting that this might be about, carrying the parallel of politics and government, is a real leader, this other kind of revolutionary leader in you. Not just out there, because it's not going to occur out there. If it did, you could not see it. But would be a leader that still would not necessarily, by any means, not have the attributes I described of being undisputed, recognizable, dominant, but his strength would have something it wouldn't have in the city, or his dominance would. It would be flexible. It would be in such a way, I described it as being either unexpected or unrecognizable. Because if Stalin had been flexible, if even the apparent leader of a democracy, the people elected somebody, they'll vote him right out of office the very next election if he apparently becomes flexible. Because they don't call it that. The opposing party says, ha! We voted for this man and he said no more taxes. And hell, just because we fell into a depression, that son of a gun raised taxes. You can't trust anybody. Or he said that such and such group over here, our neighbors, were preparing to kill us and had us all worked up. And then later he said, I found out I was wrong. Our leader found out he was wrong. We should have attacked and killed those people and had the chance. Whatever it is, it's not called that. But you cannot have the people accepting and understanding a government that is flexible. It's wishy-washy. It's indecisive. They are simply no longer dominant. What is in a dance that somebody leads and somebody follows, you take up with somebody. You find yourself in a dance with a leader, a religious leader, a political leader, a hero, somebody you imagine, Elvis. You don't imagine. God, I hate to even imagine that you people, any of you imagine, but here we go. Why should I always pick on the Pope and Stalin? Let's bring in Elvis. You can't imagine. I guess you people, it's more John Lennon, which I find equally as interesting. You can't imagine St. Matthew, St. Peter, Jesus, Stalin, John Lennon being indecisive. Playing along. John, is that an E-flat chord there? I told you guys it's a B-flat minor. Are you sure? I said it's not. But listen, I said, hey, if you're going to play this session, I told you it was a B-flat minor. Stalin says, kill them all, that village. Yeah, but your grandmother lives there. Oh, well, let's see. That's the beginning of the end. Oh, a man may stay in power a while, but you can't do that. Don't tell me, well, he's being humane. Nah, he's being flexible. There is now too much energy unavailable. He is playing along with what is assumed to be the general scheme of things in a closed system, the ever increase of entropy. But if you're going to stay in power within a closed area of your lifetime, in this case apparently jumping back now to out there, you have got to be dominant. And people do not imagine it. Boy, if I could meet John Lennon, if I could meet Elvis, if I could meet Jesus. Of course, you're talking about a dance. You don't imagine that you're going to start dancing and right after a few steps, Jesus is going to say, how's it go now? Any more than you imagine Lennon, that he said, well, here's one of the songs I wrote, and he gets in the middle, and he turns around to somebody and says, I forgot, what's the chords of this song? No! In the city, the monarch, the force, the power apparently in charge now, remember, all this in you, cannot be flexible. Cannot appear to be flexible because that's not what it's called. That is not how the molecular structure of life in man operates. But I repeat, this kind of real leader I was insinuating about, a real possibility of another kind of sense of authority and purpose and feeling of I in you would not necessarily be lacking the attributes that would be lacking now that you dream of, that would be true back at the ordinary level, that is, of being undisputedly in charge, being recognizable, being the dominant figure. There's no dispute that he is in charge, but the thing that is lacking under ordinary laws of physics, under ordinary laws of political science, is he would be dominant, or she would be dominant, intelligent, strong, but flexible. Because it would be in areas of new neurological connections. They would have almost been grown just in the midst of the atmosphere. It's almost a kind of fifth dimension intellectual photosynthesis, but instead of you being a green plant and turning atmospheric carbon dioxide and water into carbohydrates, it's like you can now take what goes on, these new connections, and it's almost as though you, from the atmosphere, from nothing, have produced new carbohydrates, and so that read new neural connections. And now you're producing your own in the same way that... I can't believe I got into photosynthesis from here, but in the same way... Well, here we are and here we are. Since I started, all of you surely remember this, the point that humans have got to eat plants or else eat other animals that have eaten plants is that humans cannot produce those kinds of complex sugars, those whole families of carbohydrates from the atmospheric carbon available. Humans cannot do it. So there is no flexibility. If you're a human and you're going to live, you got to have that kind of carbon intake, those kind of complex carbohydrates and sugars. For you to live, you got to eat plants, or you got to eat animals that have eaten plants, other animals, whether it be cows or other humans. You got to eat something that has got those carbohydrates that plants produced from atmospheric carbon dioxide, and water, and etc. But you see the corollary, once I stuck my foot in it, that is the same description, that is the same inflexible situation that the ordinary level of intelligence has in you. That is, what you know, as I was telling you not before last, can't be changed. You cannot convert what you know. You cannot change your mind. You cannot take what is already a fait accompli That is, the way your intelligence was situated, structured, yours and everybody else, and change it. What you got to do is have another one. And the other one is almost, where I stuck my foot in this, it's almost as though, okay, metaphorically, that you can now produce from atmospheric stuff, the parallel being atmospheric available carbon dioxide, that you can take it and now create your own. Instead of sugars and carbohydrates, you can now do a flexible of taking that which is not based upon the old structures, that's now almost just free floating, that other people can't. It's just unreasonable. It denies, in fact, these laws. That's what I was asking if any of you saw the implications of 50 minutes ago, and nobody said enough to keep me going. You can now apparently almost reverse these kind of processes that you're learning from nothing. Or, for those of you who really enjoyed it the other night, and there were darn few of you, what if it's this, that you don't actually learn something new and go against any of these laws? It's just the same stuff floating around, whereas other humans, got to straddle these metaphors right quick, instead of other humans, all other humans, and you at the ordinary level, being incapable of taking the free-floating, the atmospheric carbon dioxide and turning it into what you need, instead of that being the case, what if it is that you can't really do that? It's just that what's going on, you can inhale it in a different way. In other words, you don't really know anything that other people don't know. You just think about everything that they know in a different way. That is, that the same atmospheric potentials are there, and whereas at the ordinary level, you can't fix atmospheric CO2, combine it with water, and get in the sunlight, and produce this necessary nutrition, these carbohydrates. Right, in the same way, what if it's not? That these other structures, these strange colored, not green plants, not ordinary humans, that seem to know things throughout history that other people don't know, and that seem to attract some other group of people to come and say, I want to know it, I got to know it. What if they don't actually, quote, know something? It's not actually a matter that they've got different kinds of carbohydrates, new kinds of sugars, but that they're able to take that which everybody else cannot use. Remember, we're jumping back and forth metaphors almost as fast as I can talk. Whereas ordinary, you and everybody else ordinarily cannot take atmospheric CO2 and turn it into these necessary nutrients, these carbohydrates. What if now, we jump back to the other side of the metaphor, what if now you don't know anything different, you don't know secrets, it's you taking this that everybody else can't use, and you can think about it differently. I see not many of you like that idea much more than you did 96 hours previously.